This is the second time Sergeant Pavlov's position has been targeted as he directs his squad and tries to stay alive on the north side of the house. He's scarcely spit the dust out of his mouth from the German mortar shell that hit the roof almost right over him before a sharpshooter, seeing him dazed and temporarily out of cover, sizzles the top hairs of his ushanka with a rifle round. To his left, Mirzaev and Turdayev take down their 3rd Panzer with an anti-tank rifle. To his right, Gredin is slumped dead over his now silent mortar. On the west side of the house, Chekhov, the killer, takes his station to chasten the column of German MG squads who have asserted themselves in an attack lane. The east wall? It's only nominally a wall, watched over by a few troopers and the group's artillery spotter, Potansky. At least there was time to set mines on one of the approaches. This was from my second and geometrically more rewarding tussle with Pavlov's house from Dan Verson Games, one of the older titles of the publisher's popular Valiant Defense series, which includes Soldiers in Postmen's Uniforms, Castle Itter, The Strangest Battle of World War II, Lanzerath Ridge, and Guadalcanal, The Battle for Henderson's Field. This series of designs offers history buffs and board gamers with an appetite for accessible, middleweight game systems that gives them both the chance to manage desperate pockets of World War II action against Axis powers that ended up in real life meriting their own chapters in the era's history, mythology, and propaganda. This is hard-pressed platoon-level action that forces you to think like a lieutenant, or a sergeant if the lieutenant's already dead, which happens, whose unit is surrounded, whose ammo is too low, and enjoy from the comfort of your chair, weighing a string of critical decisions made in a world with a scant supply of second chances. In the case of Pavlov's house, designer David Thompson deposits you in the thick of it. The Battle of Stalingrad and the storming and subsequent defense of Pavlov's house, a 4-story apartment block where Sergeant Yakov Pavlov and company seized and held this do-or-die strongpoint in the center of the city, where during that winter, key locations were sometimes changed hands dozens of times in terrifying chains of assaults and counter-assaults. Thompson puts another historically grounded proposition in front of you. Since about 26 of Pavlov's 30 men died in their initial sprint to the house and the ensuing welcome to the neighborhood firefight, how do you keep it? The answer plays out across 3 horizontal sections of game board, which zoom you into 3 levels of building detail and pressure. On the right, a high view of the regimental command areas around the nearby Volga River, where you have to think like a general in a bunker and make tough decisions about how to support the boys in the house, with Stuka dive bombers appearing regularly to disrupt your defense and staging areas. Do you ready some artillery? Get food and medicine on a bolt across the Volga? String up comms lines that will give you more breathing room and help you more efficiently issue commands? Fix the cratered anti-aircraft site in time for the next appearance of the howling Junker 87s? You can't do it all because the house is just one of many pots on the Russian command stove, and sometimes even when you do get the right adjutant in the right place with the right order, a bomb will swat your attentions off the board like a cat at play. In my first game, my first ever casualty was due to hunger because one of those Volga boats didn't make it. A vivid connection point in play between your decisions on the right area and how it rolls down to the street-level bind those men across the river were in. So let's pan to the middle of the board. We're looking at an aerial shot just across the river. There's the roof of Pavlov's house with its commanding views of 9 January Square, and the German armor and infantry that spawns on 6 tracks surrounding 3 sides of the house. Panzer IIs, 3s, and 4s, Stugs, scouts, infantry, machine guns teams. This is where you draw cards from a deck of German action, conjuring not only these units, but other lethal interference, bombings, shellings, snipings, all designed to wear you down so that the counters on the board can breach the house when the next assault card comes up in the Wehrmacht deck. If that happens, you're done. There's no final score to tally up. Every so often, you also have to pass a supply checkpoint. Not having comestibles in the house has immediate consequences, like we just discussed. Now, on the left board, you're looking at an abstracted map of the apartment block itself, where Pavlov's squad, represented vividly with counters, some of which even have their period photos from their mugshots and names of the men who mounted the stand. This is where you make a different set of decisions. These are informed by both your command level panel on the right third of the board and what the Germans are up to in the middle, and it's all told in individual motion and lethality. So using your limited command, you got a handful of command actions, right? So but you can't do everything, just like you can't do everything on the right side of the board. So you hustle specialists from side to side of the house, get key dudes out of the reserves and into play, shoot at encroaching German units, or forgo move and shoot to set up suppression fire opportunities, refresh an exhausted comrade, or get heavier weapons and the required teams in place. A constant dilemma where the horizon of near term and the undeniable now yell in either ear with equal legitimacy and with equally dire consequences. I've played 3 times now at the basic setting, so here's the state of my sketchbook and my impressions so far. For the most part, I found the rulebook a clear and useful conduit to help me connect the action on all 3 parts of the board. By my 3rd play, I was still getting my clock cleaned, but running more and more of it on the reference cards without looking things up in the book. I'm thinking about some kind of formula here about decision space versus roll-and-check deterministic elements and how they deliver story, and it all feels wonderfully balanced on the whole. There are a couple of minor points I'm still having trouble with, but the curve was generally not steep. I used to have to take a break between turns. Now I'm running several turns smoothly, with the exception of a few German deck questions that still keep bugging me. But on the whole, I feel I've picked a war game with the right weight for me. I also love how the rationing of actions and pressure to act ripple across the 3 sections of boards, the shit rolling downhill to the nervous systems of whoever's still alive or able to man a gun inside the house. I've been experimenting with my opening sequences inside the house itself and with the command focus on the right half of the board, finding multiple paths to explore within those first few critical moves. Deciding when and if to bring in heavy weapons teams versus high-stat individual shooters versus bonus-granting leaders, overlaid with what you're focusing on at the regimental level, it's a stimulating stew of wrinkles. In my 2nd game, I survived and held the house, losing just 2 men, but scored dismally on points because I was too timid to stage counter-assaults. I built up my comms on the right board by sending my Ruskies up telegraph poles, plus rushed my whole officer command team into the house, which also widened up the range of responses I had to relax the German vice at the street level. I tried the same thing in the 3rd game and simply got bombed off the map. On the right, my anti-aircraft gunners just couldn't seem to hit anything. The Stukas ripped everything apart, forcing me into a reactive state where I was nervously chasing them around with a dustpan, trying to ready sights that they doggedly hit again and again. At one point, I had 0 functioning staging, artillery, or AA sites anywhere on the east side of the Volga, freeing them up to blast my Sisyphean attempts to establish comms and also even threatening my regimental HQ. At the house itself, German artillery dudes must have been given extra good methamphetamine that day because they dropped every size shell they had right where it needed to be, peeling back the squad's fortifications like an onion and pounding the soft flesh within into an almost constant state of suppression that meant they could do little except shiver behind piles of brick and get the occasional rifle shot off. But this was fine. It was better than fine because the story welled up out of the bedrock of this game easier and easier each time. 3 years ago, I would have told you that Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, the card game, was my unimpeachable number 1 of all time. But in my late, mostly solo career, I'd have to tell you that Thunderbolt Apache Leader has taken that spot. I can scarcely imagine what would dislodge it, but I will say Pavlov's house is delivering everything I wanted to get out of it and is going to be seeing heavy play this year. Thunderbolt Apache Leader passed, or failed, depending on how you look at it, the hygiene test. When I was on day 2 of a mission, this game was so engrossing that I did not want to bathe or eat. Nothing I've played, war games or otherwise, in the past 5 years was so engrossing. But Pavlov's house earns different but laudable medals. By game 2, I'm waking up and walking right to the table to play out the rest of a game before I do anything else in the morning. Before anything except coffee, that is. It also wins the Resident Guest Award. I've got to the point where I'm not putting it away in between games because I know I'm going to be setting it up again within the next 12 hours. That's good. That's a winner. That's something that will see heavy play for the next few months. That is your money's worth. There's only one bittersweet note, the knowledge that this game has been out for 7 years and I'm just now getting to it. Scroll to any memory, looking at bullshit on Lowe's some Saturday, eating a so-so meal with people who don't say anything interesting, binging some series on, I can't even remember, was it Amazon Prime? Who cares? Can't even remember the name of the show. This whole time, I could have been playing Pavlov's house, defending the house, within the game and without. The tragedy of misallocation will always haunt you.